The Florida Gators don't know for sure who their starting quarterback is going to be in the 2023 season, but if it's Graham Mertz, what will that look like?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country and NFL 33. And now we're talking about the quarterback battle because why wouldn't we? It's awesome, right? I'm a fan of quarterback battles. What we're going to do today is if Graham Mertz, who is currently the favorite for that starting quarterback spot, if he wins that starting quarterback spot, what will this team look like? Well, first, with Graham Mertz, you have to look at what he can do as a passer. Obviously, he's a quarterback. In the short to intermediate range, so passes that go from 0 to 20 yards past the line of scrimmage, in 2022, Graham Mertz went 115 for 184. That's a completion percentage of 62.5%, 10 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. The 10 touchdowns to 6 interceptions thing, not great. Like you wouldn't like seeing 10 touchdowns, 6 picks. You wouldn't like seeing 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. You wouldn't really like seeing 30 touchdowns, 18 picks. It's just a bad look to have that ratio, right? I think we could all agree. It's not great. So that's okay. 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. Not great, right? We agree on that? Cool. But I will also say that in that range, there were 9 drops he dealt with. Completion percentage would have been up from 62.5 to 67.3%. So for Graham Mertz, you're getting someone who's moderately consistent in the short to intermediate range. That's what most people tend to think of him as. Most people, when you talk about Graham Mertz, will call him not necessarily a game manager type, but they will talk about him as someone who is kind of a game manager, not a big ceiling kind of guy. He's going to get the job done underneath, but that's about it. Is that it? Because in 2022, as awful as Wisconsin's passing game was, Graham Mertz actually annihilated defenses when throwing the deep ball. If you look at Pro Football Focus's grades, which grain of salt, I will say that. I love PFF. Grades, But if you look at the grades, he was, I think, the 15th best quarterback on passes that went 20 plus yards downfield. In 2022, he went 22 for 53 passing 20 plus yards downfield with 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Again, not an awesome ratio. However, when you're talking about throwing the ball deep downfield and the defense has way more time to come up and make a play on the ball, 9 touchdowns to 4 picks, I'm cool with that. If I can get 18 touchdowns and 8 picks on deep passes, I don't hate that so much. This isn't underneath. This isn't slants and digs and curls. This is deep posts and go routes and corners and all of that fun stuff. That's what that is. So those are big plays. Comparing him to Anthony Richardson, by the way, who obviously everybody knows, bazooka for an arm, hell of a deep ball thrower. Graham Mertz threw the ball 20 plus yards downfield 11 less times than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson had 64 pass attempts, 20 plus yards downfield. But Anthony Richardson had 17 big time throws, which big time throws are typically thought of as tight window throws, oftentimes downfield. So Anthony Richardson had 17 big time throws. And just in this next second, take a guess at how many Graham Mertz had on 11 less attempts. 18. Graham Mertz had 18 big time throws on 11 less deep attempts. 18 big time throws on deep balls, 20 plus yards downfield, on 11 less deep attempts. than Anthony Richardson. So one more big time throw on 11 less attempts on a sample size that's not big. 11 is a pretty considerable size. Okay. Also, Graham Mertz had a 41.5% completion percentage deep downfield, 20 plus yards downfield, 41.5%. Not great. That's below average in college football last season. However, if you account for drops, there's a 5-point jump from 41.5% to 47.2%. Okay, sorry, 4.7% drop. Jeez, or jump. But so 47.2%, still not great, but takes you from below average to slightly above average on that volume of deep attempts. So that is an improvement. Okay. So you look at, Graham Mertz, improve there. You look at Graham Mertz short game, he's solid. Graham Mertz deep game, he's solid. I'm also bad at math. That's 5.7, not 4.7%. So furthers my point. I'm having a day. Furthers my point there. So Graham Mertz is thought of as working underneath, not very often working over top. And not only that he doesn't work often over top, but that he's bad when he does. Well, it shows you that he's not bad when he works over top. He's just, I'll say, smart with picking his shots. We'll probably see him get to test the deep waters more often, not just in terms of pure volume, because we expect that to increase given this offense is going to be a bit more open, but also in terms of efficiency, because as much as myself and many other Gators fans, as much as we want to criticize the Florida Gators pass catchers, they're better than he's had in Wisconsin. I think everybody can agree on that. So his pass catchers are better. His offense is going to be more modern, better. And so you've got all that. But I think maybe one of the most important things that Graham Mertz brings to the table is experience. I haven't heard a single person say a single negative thing about the character of Graham Mertz. Not one has said a negative thing. And for all of the people that complained about Anthony Richardson's inexperience, here's your answer. You don't get much more experience in college than Graham Mertz. Maybe you get like Jarrett Dagey if he's still in college. I don't know. He's transferred like 4 times. Maybe you get JT Daniels, who transferred a lot but hasn't played a ton. So maybe you get more experience, but it is very rare that you get starter experience with multiple years of starting in the Big Ten here now. That's a huge advantage to have. I don't want to say improvement because it's, if you have experience being bad, then I'd rather have someone who's inexperienced in general. But Graham Mertz has that experience and the leadership qualities that you're going to need here in the SEC for a team that has gone through quite a bit of turnover, including yourself coming in as Graham Mertz. So there's been quite a bit of change. What is going to change, though, from last year to this year, we'll talk about in just a second. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Built Bar. Today is the last day that you can bet in the Built Bar poll, Built Bar March Madness poll, for what flavor is the best. You can decide. Like, you literally get to go decide. You can go place your bets with Built or BuiltBar.com. You can place your votes there. Or you can just be like me, and I don't need to vote. I love them. I love Built Bar. I love Built Puffs, especially coated in 100% chocolate. Most bars have 130 calories, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. You can go to Built or BuiltBar.com to get those and vote, or you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and get yourself a Built Bar in person, which is new, by the way. Like, that's awesome. It's been a couple years, but it's awesome. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And obviously, we just spent last segment talking about what Graham Mertz brings to the table. But now we have to talk about what he won't bring to the table that we saw last year. Maybe is the best way to word it. But what Graham Mertz doesn't do that Anthony Richardson did, or what Graham Mertz doesn't do that Anthony Richardson was asked to do last year. Starting off, quarterback runs. They're probably going to be eliminated for the most part. But for the read option specifically, I don't think it's going to go away completely, because Here's the thing, and I understand people go, "Oh, Graham Mertz, not super athletic, can't run the read option." That's not how that works, okay? If anything, the read option might be even more consistent with Graham Mertz, but less explosive with Graham Mertz because truly, genuinely, truly, any quarterback on the planet could run the read option. Big plays won't happen as much, but realistically, a read option for Graham Mertz in an obvious running situation probably gonna get you a first down. Like let's just play hypothetical here. You got Graham Mertz in the backfield with Montrell Johnson or Trevor Etienne, doesn't matter. But Graham Mertz in the backfield, Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, Cam Carroll, a running back next to him. It's 3rd and 1. What do you think this team is doing? Because the thought process is probably they're running the ball or they're throwing the ball short and picking up yardage there, right? Personally, me, I might take a deep shot on 3rd and 1, be like, hey, well, guess what? We're going for it on 4th down if we don't get it. I'll trust our running backs. But most likely, it's going to be a run or a short pass, okay? You've got that 3rd and 1. You've got any tight end on the right side of you. You've got the running back on the right side of you. That's clearly your strong side. You take the snap and you look at that backside end, the strong side end. Okay? There is a slim chance that he closes in on Graham Mertz. It is most likely he's just going to fire at the running back. If he fires at the running back, you've got the tight end there sealing the edge with the tackle. You've got the edge rusher coming in and going after your running back. You're going to tell me Graham Mertz can't pick up a couple of yards there and get you a first down? Again, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm saying, though, don't work under the assumption that Graham Mertz isn't Anthony Richardson, therefore Graham Mertz can't run the read option, or Graham Mertz isn't Anthony Richardson, therefore Graham Mertz can't run the ball. There's a time and place for people thought of as non-mobile or immobile quarterbacks to run the ball. It's not as horrible as it was with Kyle Trask in 2020, where Dan Mullen was like, hey, we're going to come out in an empty set, and if there's a light box, we're going to run with Kyle Trask. It's not that crazy, but you can still find effectiveness there. And another thing is talking about bootlegs, waggle, whatever you want to call them. You can still see that. You will probably see less of those, but not because Graham Mertz can't do it. Everybody can operate out of bootleg. Peyton Manning ran bootlegs, and he was the least athletic quarterback I've ever seen. And I mean late in his career, Peyton Manning. I mean 2015, Peyton Manning was running bootleg, or maybe 2014, whatever, the Broncos Super Bowl. That Peyton Manning was running bootlegs effectively because you don't need to be able to run to do it. It helps you shift the whole defense. You shift everything. It helps you as a passer. It does help that if you can take off running, that they have to respect that as well. But it's also like, if you can't run, they're probably not, or if you're not a runner, they're probably not going to respect your running game. They're probably going to focus on covering deep, and maybe you pick up a couple short yards. So 3rd and 1, run a bootleg, roll out, and oh my goodness, there's nobody in sight because they're all respecting the pass. So I'm going to run and pick up a couple yards and get a first down. Stuff like that, where you won't see it as often. You will still see it. It is still going to be an effective part of this passing game. And again, as far as the passing game goes, might be more effective. Okay? One thing that I will say Graham Mertz cannot do as well as Anthony Richardson is avoid sacks. Anthony Richardson in 2022 was one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I'd say he's a top 2 quarterback in college football at avoiding sacks when pressure came in. First is probably Bryce Young for me. That was elite evasiveness, especially from someone as small as he is. Awesome, because AR could take the hit and brush it off and go make a play, whereas Bryce Young would actually have to evade these people. But Anthony Richardson did a great job of pressure coming in. I can take the hit. They can wrap up my legs and I can still throw because I have a howitzer attached to my torso. I can outrun them. I can make all these big plays. Graham Mertz was not great at that in 2022. Graham Mertz was actually below average at when pressure came in to avoid the sack. Okay, so Graham Mertz is not going to be as good as Anthony Richardson was there. It's just, and that's not like that is kind of a knock on Graham Mertz, but that's more of a testament to how good Anthony Richardson was at it in 2022. So yeah, Graham Mertz not going to be great at it. Anthony Richardson was elite at it. That's probably the one thing I'm going to say that he cannot do that Anthony Richardson could do. Obviously, throw 80 yards. Graham Mertz probably can't do. Outrun an entire defense. Graham Mertz can't do. But the functional things that you will actually be relied upon to do, avoiding sacks, is the number one thing that Anthony Richardson did that Graham Mertz does not do nearly as well as Anthony Richardson. But you could still fix that. Like you could still have, you might have to actually at that point say, okay, we're going to keep a tight end to pass protect. We're going to keep a running back into pass protect because we need that. We can't just bank on, sending 5 guys out to run routes and Anthony Richardson can make plays. That's not what happens really. But that's still something that Graham Mertz will probably need to work on and something that you can work around so it's not a killer. But with Graham Mertz potentially being a starting quarterback, and in this hypothetical, he wins the starting quarterback battle, what does that mean for other quarterbacks? Well, first off, if Graham Mertz wins the starting quarterback battle, let's say he wins the battle in the spring. Because again, it's possible that we come out of the spring game without knowing who the starting quarterback is. Maybe we have a lean, but we're not sure who it's going to be. And maybe we have to go into fall ball with that. That's also a strategy that I think Billy Napier will utilize of saying, well, we're going to need to spend some time to evaluate what we've got going on. And we'll probably decide late in the summer. Because if Graham Mertz wins the starting quarterback battle, in the spring, like spring ball wraps up and it's Graham Mertz. Clearly, Billy Napier is even saying publicly, it's Graham Mertz. Jack Miller is our backup. I would assume Jack Miller III is done in Gainesville at that point. Whether that means he hits the portal during the second window or hits the portal after the season or whatever it might be, if Graham Mertz wins this battle, I don't think Jack Miller will ever win a quarterback battle in Gainesville. Because if you lose to Graham Mertz, next year you'll probably lose to Max Brown or Graham Mertz again or DJ Lagway. So probably not going to happen for you. So Jack Miller's probably done if he loses. And the reason I say that Florida might come out of the spring game and go, we need to evaluate still. We're going to take this battle into the summer or into the fall. Because if you say, we're going to keep this battle going until the fall, then maybe Jack Miller's like, okay, I still have a chance. I'm going to stay and keep fighting. And if I win, I win. If I lose, then I'll leave. So that's what I would do if I was a coach, is I would say that regardless of whether or not I know who's going to be my starter. What happens to Max Brown if Graham Mertz wins the starting quarterback battle this year? I don't think it makes an impact on him regardless. Because Max Brown was a 3-star quarterback recruit coming out of Oklahoma that was committed to Central Michigan, and Billy Napier stole him late in the game. Okay? But coming into this offseason, Max Brown, and when Billy Napier took Max Brown from Central Michigan, it was very clear, and Billy Napier was pretty open, like, hey, Max Brown needs a year. Like, he needs a year at least. So Max Brown going into this spring was never thought of as the starter. He was never thought of as a legitimate option to be the starter. Even when we talk about him here, and even when anybody else in Gators media talks about him, it's always the hypothetical of if Max Brown can do that, then great. But it's always been the hypothetical. It's never been he's doing it. So for Max Brown, I don't think it changes anything. And you know me, like, I'll never rule anything out. That's not what I like to do. But with Max Brown, it's also a different scenario because when you're talking about Max Brown, you also have to consider Max Brown is currently a backup for the Florida Gators football team at quarterback. Max Brown is currently on the Florida Gators baseball team, which is freaking elite right now. Awesome. Suck it, Auburn. So for Max Brown, you have to consider that as well, that he's a dual sport athlete in Gainesville. This isn't just, I put all my eggs in playing QB. I don't get to do it. I'm going to leave, because now he's also playing for the baseball team. So Max Brown very likely will be a Gator this year, next year, and beyond. Then, if Graham Mertz wins the starting quarterback battle this year, does that impact DJ Lagway? Maybe, but not really, because best case scenario for Graham Mertz, he wins the starting quarterback battle, he balls out this year, he goes to the NFL draft. Okay. Worst case for Graham Mertz, assuming he wins the starting quarterback battle, is that he wins the starting quarterback battle and then stinks it up. And say you've got that. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, open the quarterback battle back up. We're going to figure out who's going to be our starter for 2024. But if Graham Mertz has a great year, he's probably leaving to the draft. If he has a horrible year, he's probably not winning a quarterback battle next year. If he starts and has a year, then he's probably entering a quarterback battle once again. So there's that. But either way, the absolute worst case scenario here for DJ Lagway is in 2024 that he doesn't start as a true freshman in 2024, which wasn't a guarantee anyway. So I don't think Graham Mertz getting the starting quarterback battle or getting the starting quarterback job really impacts DJ Lagway at all. Maybe tomorrow we'll probably talk about Jack Miller here. So maybe that impacts Lagway, but even then, we'll see. But for Locked On Gators, thank you, by the way. That's what I'm going to say. Thank you for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We'll be back tomorrow, probably talking about Jack Miller. For Locked On Gators, though, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole 9 Sports, Giants Country, and NFL 33. And I will see you all